There's a particular kind of cruelty that only family can pull off. Strangers don't have the blueprint. They don't know where the soft spots are, which memories still bleed when you press on them, which words will slip past every wall you've built and land right in the center of your chest. Strangers have to guess. Family? Family walks straight in through the doors you left unlocked because you thought love meant you didn't need locks. My name is Ava. I was 30 years old the day my father threw a barbecue to celebrate getting rid of me. Not a quiet, awkward, maybe it's time you found your own place conversation over coffee. No, a full-blown party, burgers on the grill, country music rattling the patio speakers, neighbors milling around with paper plates and cold beer, and stretched across the garage door, mounted with actual hardware grommets like it was meant to survive a storm, a vinyl banner in fat red letters, "Goodbye, freeloader, don't come back." I wish I could tell you I didn't feel it, that I was already so far past caring that the banner bounced right off me. But I'd be lying. The thing about emotional sucker punches is that your body registers them before your brain catches up. My hands went cold. My stomach dropped. And then, slowly, like a radio finding its frequency, everything sharpened. I looked at that banner. I looked at the people laughing beneath it, and something inside me shifted from hurt to clear. My Uncle Dean was sweating through a fishing shirt on the patio, half drunk before 3 o'clock, swinging a beer bottle around while he shouted that a 30-year-old woman with no real career should be ashamed of herself. My sister Kelsey stood near the grill in cutoffs and full makeup, recording clips for social media, because apparently humiliation hits different with a filter and a trending sound. My grandmother Lorraine sat under a patio umbrella, looking pinched and righteous, the way she always looked when cruelty was being served in God's name, and my father, Richard Bennett, wore an apron that said, "Boss of the Grill," and spread his arms wide when he saw me, like he was welcoming me to my own funeral. "Look who finally came to claim her junk," he said. Everybody laughed. Someone threw a hot dog at my car. "There's your last free meal, loser." More laughter. Even the kids were pointing. I walked inside without a word. My last box was in the laundry room. Someone had written "starter kit" on top in black marker. Inside, dryer sheets, ramen noodles, a half-used roll of trash bags, and a printed list of apartment complexes. Like care packages for a raccoon they'd trapped under the porch. That almost broke me. Not because it hurt, because it was so stupidly theatrical. I carried the box to my trunk, set it down, and then I did the only thing that mattered. I lifted my phone and took one photograph. The banner, the smoke, the grinning faces, my father in his apron, Dean with his beer, Kelsey mid-laugh. He called after me. "What? Collecting evidence for your therapist?" I looked him dead in the eye. First words I'd said all day. "No, for later." Then I drove away. Here's the part they never told anyone. The version that made the rounds, at church, on Facebook, in driveways after dark, was simple and satisfying in that way people love because it lets them feel superior. Ava's 30, divorced before she ever got married, lives off her daddy, works on a little laptop, can't grow up, tough love finally kicked in, clean story, easy villain. The truth was uglier, and it was uglier because it made them the ones who couldn't survive without me. 3 years before that barbecue, I moved back into my father's house. Not because I was lost, because his sign company was drowning. Bennett Graphics and Install had been bleeding money for months. Supply costs skyrocketed. 2 big clients paid late. A permit issue killed a project. And suddenly the company that looked solid from the street was running on fumes and my father's talent for bluffing. I came home to help. Temporarily. That was the lie I fed myself because the truth tasted worse. I came home because I loved him, and love made me stupid. The first month, I reorganized his invoices. The second month, I caught a missed permit renewal that would have cost him a city contract. Then, I found the tax errors. Then, the equipment leases auto-renewing at insane rates. Then, the receivables that were pure fantasy because nobody was following up and the bookkeeper had quit without handing anything off. Every time I fixed one thing, 2 more crawled out behind it, rot under drywall. That's what it was. But here's what made it poison. He never once acknowledged it. I worked remotely as a freelance bid coordinator, helping contractors and suppliers organize proposals, clean up documentation, hit deadlines. It paid well because the work was tedious and most people were terrible at it, but my family didn't respect it. They respected steel-toed boots, sweat, exhaustion you could see, a woman on a laptop in the kitchen. That wasn't work, that was a hobby. So when I saved his company from collapsing, quietly, repeatedly, at 2 in the morning while everyone else slept, my father introduced me to clients as, "My daughter, she's figuring some things out right now." When I negotiated with suppliers so they wouldn't freeze his accounts, he told relatives I mostly just answered emails. When I covered a payroll gap out of my own pocket because he couldn't pay his installers and would rather die than admit it, he said one thing that should have woken me up right then. Families don't keep score. Remember that line. Because families like mine only say it when they're the ones running up the tab. I paid for software subscriptions, overdue utility bills on his workshop, insurance fees on the work van, rush shipping when he forgot to order materials, and vendor deposits that would have killed live projects if they bounced. Over 3 years, the exposed number crossed $112,000, and that doesn't even count the labor, the midnight fixes, the rewritten emails, the disasters I stopped before they had names. None of it mattered, because I didn't wear boots, because I didn't sweat where they could see, because I was a woman on a laptop, and in my father's world, if he couldn't see the work, it wasn't real. Then one Friday night, I overheard him in the backyard telling my uncle and a neighbor he was going to give me 90 days to get out. "Maybe hitting bottom will finally make a woman out of her," he said. They laughed. My sister laughed too. And that was the night I stopped hurting and started planning. People assume revenge starts with rage, some dramatic moment where you slam your fist on a table, throw a glass against a wall, say something devastating that echoes through the room like thunder. Mine started with a spreadsheet. Not because I'm cold, because I'd spent 30 years learning what happens when you show emotion in a family like mine. Cry and you're unstable. Raise your voice and you're disrespectful. Defend yourself and you're proving their point. Every reaction gets intercepted, repackaged, and used against you before the sun goes down. Facts were the only language my father couldn't talk over, and even then, he'd try. So I built a file, 30 months of receipts, every emergency payment I'd floated on my credit card, every software renewal, every permit fee I'd paid through the city portal because the company would have been locked out, every fuel card transfer, every invoice I'd corrected before a client rejected it, every bid package I assembled under my own freelance login because my father had missed the deadline and begged me to save it, every text that said, "Can you just handle this one thing?" Every voicemail from Dean asking me to send a couple hundred to keep the work van from getting repossessed, every message from Kelsey asking me to front her rent because Dad said things were tight and she'd pay me back after a brand deal. Every time she didn't. I logged it all. Not with anger, with patience. The kind of patience you develop when you realize nobody is coming to rescue you, so the evidence better be flawless. Around the same time, a regular client in Colorado offered me a long-term contract, stable enough that I could leave Phoenix, rent my own place, and stop pouring myself into people who only noticed me when the lights flickered. I signed it quietly. Put a deposit on a 1-bedroom outside Denver. Told no one. Then I started disappearing in slow motion. I rented a storage unit near the interstate and moved things out in batches so gradual nobody saw. Winter clothes one trip, books the next, kitchen equipment I'd paid for myself. The expensive monitor my father assumed had materialized out of thin air. Week by week, piece by piece, I was already gone before anyone thought to look. Maybe that sounds calculated. It was. When you grow up in a house where every boundary turns into a courtroom, secrecy stops feeling like dishonesty and starts feeling like survival. My father beat me to the formal eviction speech by about 6 days. Tuesday morning. I was reviewing a supplier compliance packet at the kitchen table when he walked in with that tone. You know the one. The tone people use when they expect applause for being cruel. He said he wanted me out by the end of the month. Said he loved me enough to stop enabling me. Said no good man would respect a woman who still leaned on her daddy at 30. Said he was embarrassed when clients pulled up and saw my car in the driveway during the day. I asked one question. Do you want me gone? Or do you want an audience when I leave? He smirked. Maybe both. I almost told him everything right there. Would have felt incredible for about 10 seconds. But I knew him. If my father heard the truth in private, he'd survive it. He'd rewrite it. He'd twist it. By Sunday lunch, the family story would be that unstable Ava tried to blackmail him after he lovingly encouraged her to stand on her own feet. No. If the truth was going to land, it needed witnesses. Better yet, it needed consequences. He gave me until Saturday. I nodded like a woman too ashamed to argue. By Thursday, everything valuable was already in Colorado. Friday night, I pulled the last threads, removed my credit card from the vendor portal, closed every auto-pay backup quietly tied to company utilities and service accounts, notified one supplier that future emergency orders would need management approval, and I sent 2 overdue invoices to clients exactly as my father had dictated. Except this time, I didn't clean up his language. I didn't soften it. I didn't translate his rambling into something professional. I forwarded his exact words. You'd be shocked how fast respect disappears when people finally hear you without a translator. Saturday, I picked up my last box, walked into the party, took the photo, left, and then I did the most violent thing I've ever done in my life. I went silent. 3 days. That's how long the quiet lasted before the first crack appeared. 3 days of nothing. No calls, no check-ins, no panicked emails answered at midnight. My father and his little empire thought they had won. Thought my absence was surrender. That's how entitlement works. It mistakes silence for weakness right up until the ground starts shaking. Monday, a municipal client rejected a permit resubmission because the attached insurance certificate had expired. Normally, I would have caught it, called the broker, forced a same-day update. This time the email sat in the inbox until the client copied my father directly with 5 words. Final delay before reassignment. He called me once. I let it ring. Tuesday. The project management software went dark. The backup card on file was gone. The primary declined. Work orders, install dates, measurements, all of it vanished behind a billing error nobody knew how to fix. My sister texted me a single line. Dad says stop being dramatic and log in. Wednesday morning, the power company left a shut-off warning on the workshop account. My father called at 7:12 a.m. using the voice he usually saved for pastors and bankers. Soft, careful. The voice of a man who has just realized the floor beneath him isn't solid. Ava, sweetheart, call me when you get this. There's some confusion with the utility account. I think maybe your card was still linked somehow. We can straighten it out. Confusion. I nearly laughed out loud. Thursday, Dean left a voicemail slurring less than usual, which meant he was genuinely scared. He said he hadn't meant anything at the party. Said I knew how he got when he drank. Said could I please just help with the van payment, because if the company lost the install job scheduled for Friday, everyone would suffer. Everyone. That word toxic families love most after they've burned the one person holding it together. Suddenly, it's about everyone. Friday broke things wide open. Kelsey called crying, which told me immediately the problem had crossed over from business inconvenience into personal discomfort. She never cried over principle. She cried over disruption. Dad was in a mood. Dean was blaming everybody. Grandma was saying God was punishing the family for pride. Kelsey needed $600 because the med spa cut her hours and Dad couldn't help because of some payroll issue, and could I please not make this into a thing? That phrase, don't make this into a thing. It had chased me my entire life like a low-grade curse. Don't make it a thing when Dean joked about my body. Don't make it a thing when Dad gave away my room for storage. Don't make it a thing when Kelsey borrowed money and forgot. Don't make it a thing when Grandma compared me to younger women with husbands, babies, and church dresses. My pain was always the thing. Their behavior was always just weather. So I asked her one question. Do you know why Dad can't help you right now? She went quiet. Annoyed quiet. Younger sibling quiet. The kind of quiet that wants an answer without the shame attached. No. He just keeps saying cash flow is weird. Cash flow is weird, I repeated. And then I laughed. That night she came back angry. Accused me of punishing the family. Said Dad had every right to kick me out since I wasn't contributing. Said normal adults pay rent. I sent her one screenshot. Not the whole file, just a cropped spreadsheet showing 3 months of payments. Her name, Dad's company name, the workshop utility account. Underneath, I typed 6 words. Since you're interested in contribution. She didn't respond for 2 hours. Then, what is this? A sample. Saturday morning, my father called 6 times before noon. By the 3rd voicemail, the swagger was gone. By the 5th, the anger had burned off. By the 6th, all that was left was panic, trying to sound dignified. Ava, please call me back. I'm asking as your father. We need to clear up what you've been paying and what you turned off. The vendor account is locked. The workshop power is pending disconnect. One of the trucks might get pulled because the insurance auto-pay bounced. If this is some kind of lesson, okay. Lesson learned. Call me. Lesson learned. Not, I'm sorry. Not we were wrong. Just the managerial language of a man discovering that his invisible infrastructure has feelings. And that's when I knew it was time to sit across from him, not in his kitchen, not on his terms, and show him the difference between his story and mine. I chose a diner off the highway, the kind of place where truckers eat eggs at odd hours and nobody looks twice at a grown man who hasn't slept. Neutral ground, witnesses without investment, no home court advantage for anyone. He texted back, home, when I suggested it. Of course he did. Men like my father only feel safe negotiating in rooms they own. I typed back, you wanted an audience when I left. You can have one when you ask why. He showed up 10 minutes early. I knew because his truck was already crooked in the lot when I pulled in, parked the way people park when they arrive too fast and don't bother to straighten out. Dean was with him? Naturally. Men like my uncle don't believe women are serious unless another man is sitting close enough to absorb the shock. Neither of them ordered food. I set the packet on the table between us like a brick wrapped in paper. 31 pages, cover sheet, timeline, amounts, screenshots of texts and payment confirmations, notes on every emergency I had quietly intercepted, separate sections for company expenses, household support, personal transfers to family members, and a conservative estimate of my unpaid labor. At the very end, one photograph. The banner, the grill smoke, the grins. My father looked at the packet like paper itself had insulted him. What is this? I slid it across. The difference between your story and mine. He opened it expecting nonsense. That confidence survived maybe 10 seconds. His eyes hit the total and something behind them shifted. Not guilt, not yet. Something closer to vertigo. Dean leaned over, read the first page, and whispered, Jesus Christ, like a man who'd just seen his own name on an accident report. I watched my father flip through it. Every page was organized so tight there was nowhere to hide. Direct support totals over 30 months, categories, company expenses I had personally covered or prevented, screenshots of every can you just handle this text, vendor deposits, insurance payments, permit fees, payroll gaps filled with my money, bid packages I assembled under my own login because he'd missed deadlines and begged me to rescue them. And through all of it, not a single invoice, not one receipt with his signature, just my bank statements proving that the woman he called a freeloader had been funding his survival. He flipped a page too hard. This is ridiculous. You're inflating everything. Am I? He jabbed at a line item. This software wasn't for me. It was for the office. Yes, I said, your office, your company. Another page. These fuel payments were temporary. 3 months, all 3 came after you told me payroll was fine. Dean had gone white. My father grabbed for higher ground, the moral kind. Families help each other, Ava. That doesn't mean you get to act like some debt collector. I let that sentence hang in the air for a second, let it breathe. Then I said, when I lived in your house, you called it freeloading. When you lived off my money, you called it family. You don't get both. He lowered his voice. Don't do this here. You mean with witnesses? I said. You taught me that. Dean tried next. Softer approach. Ava, honey, I was drunk at the party. I didn't mean any of that. I looked at him steadily. You didn't apologize when you sobered up. You apologized when the software got shut off. He had nothing for that. My father switched tactics, the way cornered men always do when the facts stop cooperating. Fine. Let's say you helped more than we realized. You were still living in my house at 30. There it was. His whole theology. The roof canceled the debt. Shelter erased everything I was owed. As long as he could point to 4 walls and a ceiling, nothing I did underneath them counted. So I said the thing I'd been carrying for 3 years. If I had paid market rent to a stranger and kept my money away from your business, you would have lost that workshop 18 months ago. If I had billed you like a real client for everything I fixed, you'd be bankrupt. The only reason you ever got to call me a freeloader is because I loved you quietly enough to let you believe it. That one landed different than the numbers. Numbers he could argue with. That sentence went somewhere deeper, somewhere he couldn't reframe fast enough. He flipped to the photo of the banner. His posture changed. Not remorse. Risk assessment. You took this for leverage, he said. No, I took it because I knew you'd pretend it wasn't that bad. Dean rubbed his face with both hands. So what now? What do you want? Nothing, I said. That's the part you still don't understand. I already paid. I'm just done. My father's jaw went tight. You can't walk away and let everything collapse over a grudge. I didn't leave because of a grudge. I left because your disrespect finally cost more than my loyalty. Silence. Then the only question that actually mattered to him surfaced like a dead thing floating up from the bottom. How much of this can you turn back on? Not are you okay? Not we were wrong. Just operations. Just machinery. I was never his daughter in that moment. I was his IT department handing in a resignation. I answered honestly. Some vendor accounts might reopen with deposits. The workshop utility could probably survive if he paid it immediately. The truck insurance would cost more now. And at least 2 clients were already damaged beyond repair because nobody had been there to translate his emails into professional English. That last part stung him worse than the money. You're enjoying this, he said. No, I would have enjoyed you noticing before it got here. He tried the widower card next. Said life had been hard since my mother died. Said he'd made mistakes. Said we shouldn't be sitting across from each other like enemies. And I almost bought the shape of it. The cadence, the softness, the grief underneath. But pain explained him. It never excused him. Then he made his last play. He listed everyone who would suffer. Grandma, Kelsey, Dean. Their need was supposed to become my obligation again. The old gravity pulling me back into orbit around his chaos. I reached into my bag and set a second envelope on the table. Inside was a list of bookkeepers, a tax resolution service, a utility assistance program, and a small business attorney. What's this? Resources, I said. That's all I'm offering. I stood up. He stopped me with one final threat, delivered the way men deliver threats when they've lost every other weapon. If you walk out now, don't expect to come back when things turn around. I picked up my keys and looked at him one last time. Dad, the only reason things ever turned around in that family was because I was standing behind you pushing. Then I left. For real this time. The aftermath came in waves, the way collapse always does when you remove the one person nobody thought was structural. Grandma called to negotiate, not apologize. She said everyone had behaved badly, which in family language means the person holding proof is being asked to split the blame with the people who caused the damage. She invoked my mother, said Mom would hate this division. That line used to crack me wide open. Not anymore. No, I said. Mom would hate that her daughter was humiliated in public by people who lived off her. For once in her life, my grandmother had no scripture ready. Kelsey showed up at my apartment in Colorado a few weeks later. Exhausted. Stripped down. No polish, no performance. She admitted everything was falling apart. Dad's company was hemorrhaging. Dean had missed shifts. A printer got sold. Grandma was furious about money. And Dad kept repeating that everything would be fine if I'd just stop being stubborn. Then she said the truest thing anyone in my family had ever spoken out loud. When you were there, he aimed most of it at you. Now that you're gone, he's turning on everyone. That was the whole system in one sentence. Families like ours stay stable by feeding one person to the tension. Remove that person and the poison has nowhere to go but everywhere. She admitted the hot dog stunt was disgusting. She admitted she joined in because Dad seemed pleased and she wanted to stay on his safe side. Cowardly, honest, human. Not enough to undo it, but more truth than I'd heard from any of them in 30 years. I let her stay one night. We didn't hug. We just sat in the same room without pretending. The house sold below asking that summer. Grandma moved in with a cousin. Dean landed on a friend's couch. My father rented a smaller place near the industrial strip and tried to keep the company breathing, but 2 major accounts were gone and one supplier demanded cash terms only. He emailed me a family resolution proposal, offering a 90-day contractor role. Compensation to be discussed later, once cash flow improved. At the bottom, he wrote that this would give me a chance to repair trust. I replied with 4 sentences. I am not returning. I am not providing unpaid or deferred labor. Do not contact me for business support again. Future communication should be respectful and personal only. His response came fast. So that's it? You watch your father lose everything? I stared at that message for a long time, because that was the deepest hook, the one sewn into my chest since childhood, the belief that if a parent drowns, the child becomes the raft. Finally, I wrote back. You are not losing everything because I left. You are losing everything because you built a life that only worked while somebody you despised kept carrying it. He never replied. 5 months later, he called from an unknown number. Said he wasn't calling about money, which told me he knew exactly what I'd assume. He said he'd found one of my mother's recipe cards while packing and thought I might want it. That was the first thing he'd offered me in years that didn't come wrapped around a demand. You can mail it, I said. Quiet. Then, softly. Did you really think I was that cruel? I could have answered 100 ways. Instead, I said, You hung it over the garage, Dad. He exhaled. That was all. The recipe card arrived 4 days later. Chicken pot pie in my mother's handwriting. At the bottom, a little note. Add more time if Richard complains. I laughed so suddenly I cried. I framed it. Colorado suited me. One contract became several. Referrals multiplied. I built an LLC with deposits up front and boundaries that didn't bend. I bought a used Subaru in cash. I learned what dinner tastes like when nobody in the next room is manufacturing a crisis. The quiet felt suspicious at first. Toxic families train you to distrust peace, to keep scanning for the next explosion. But slowly, meal by meal, morning by morning, I stopped flinching. Kelsey and I talk now, carefully. Not like movie sisters, more like 2 women testing whether honesty can survive in soil where competition used to grow. She left Arizona too, got steadier work. Sometimes she calls with practical questions, and I answer when I choose. That distinction, when I choose, still feels like the most radical thing I've ever claimed. The last message I got from Dean came on New Year's Eve. 2 words. You were right. No punctuation, no apology. Just that. I didn't respond. I still have the photo. The banner stretched tight over the garage, the smoke curling off the grill, my father in his ridiculous apron, Dean swaying on the patio, Kelsey mid-laugh with her phone raised, all of them absolutely certain they were documenting my lowest moment. What they actually captured was the last second before their safety net climbed into her car and drove away. I don't regret the photo. I don't regret the silence, the packet, the distance, or the day I stopped confusing being used with being loved. If I regret anything, it's that I stayed as long as I did. Not because the staying was noble, but because it taught me a lie that took years to unlearn. That my worth lived inside their approval. That helping people who despised me was the same thing as earning love. It wasn't. It never was. My father's greatest mistake wasn't throwing that barbecue. It was believing the woman he humiliated at the party would still be there Monday morning to keep the lights on. And by the time he figured that out, 2 weeks later, 6 voicemails deep, with the walls closing in, it was already too late. Not because I wanted it to be. Because some doors, once you finally walk through them, seal shut behind you with the quiet click of a woman who has finally stopped waiting to be seen by people who were never going to look.